Hi, I'm Chris Wilson. Well, it's been around a year now since I started this YouTube channel. As you can see back there on the plant wall, I recently got my silver play button for passing 100,000 subscribers, so thank you very much for everyone who's subscribed. It's been a great trip so far. And to celebrate these things, I wanted to do a video today that's not scripted, it's just a general channel update and take a moment to answer some of the questions from viewers. So as I mentioned, the first video on my channel was one with David Brevik, where we were celebrating the 25th anniversary of Diablo 2, and that video went really well and got the channel started. Other big ones since then have included my interview with Jonathan Rogers recently about Path of Exile 2. I did a video on my thoughts on Reign of the Warlock. I made a video about dark patterns in games that went pretty viral. And I did a video about how to get into the games industry that a lot of up-and-coming game developers appreciated. Other videos I've done have had less viewers, but I still think they're important. And it's tricky because when you're making a YouTube channel, obviously, you want to get a lot of views and subscribers and so on. But my primary motivation here is having a platform where I can talk about different topics that are important to me. And I kind of feel that if someone's subscribing to my channel, they're kind of subscribing to the subscription of my thoughts on different topics, as opposed to me sticking to one particular lane. And that's why I've got videos about Magic cards, that's why I've got videos about game development, that's why I've got videos about Diablo 2 and action RPGs, and there may be videos, like maybe I'll do a video on how I take care of my plants or something, right? Like, I want to cover a lot of different topics that interest me, and hopefully those things are also interesting to my audience. Now, I'm sure I'm hurting myself doing this. I'm sure this is why other channels focus on specific topics one at a time and have a different channel for each thing, but we'll see where it goes. And in the meantime, I'll try to space the videos out so I, don't do too many gameplay videos too close together. Like, it's been a while since I've done a video on cards, for example, and I'm a little apprehensive here because I just get the feeling that my Path of Exile audience doesn't necessarily care that much about Magic cards. Maybe they're interested in the passion I have about my collection, and I guess that's something I can try to project, but I often worry a little bit before posting a card video that it's gonna, be boring to some of the viewers, but if that's the case, just skip it. Having said that, there are some pretty cool cards in those videos. I've got some stuff coming up that I've been working on for a little while that I'm keen to show people. So I've been planning videos for the rest of this year. I've got some interesting ones, but I don't really want to spoil the surprise of what I'm going to be working on. I'd kind of rather hear from you guys ideas of what topics you'd like me to talk about, and then that will help me prioritize the videos that I do want to make. I think a few of them won't come as much of a surprise to some people. There's a lot of topics about game development that are quite big recently that I intend to do videos on, and it's just a question of what order I do those, pretty much, what people want to see next. I've actually been really enjoying doing gameplay videos like the Project Diablo 2 stuff that I played recently, and I'm considering branching out outside of action RPGs to do some videos on a few other games I've enjoyed, and I want to be careful about that because I feel I have a lot of experience with action RPGs. I've spent most of my life playing them, I've worked in the industry for a couple of decades, I have feelings there that I like to share with people and people find interesting. If I were to play some other genre of game, I'm just a noob, right? Like, sure, you'll get some design insight, I guess, if there's any overlap with action RPGs, but I'm a little worried that my insight won't be particularly meaningful. And so I'm interested to know what you think about this. Should I be doing videos about other types of genres, or do you want me to stick to stuff that I can give kind of like, a behind-the-scenes game developer commentary on? Let me know. I do have a couple of games I want to try, and I may do it as an experiment and see how they go. It'll be embarrassing, of course, because these are games I'm not necessarily any good at, so you'll get to see me fail, but maybe that's some of the fun. So this video will be my 20th one so far in the last year, and that suggests a cadence of approximately one video every 2.5 weeks. And I think I've sped up the cadence a little bit this year, having it be a bit closer to 2 weeks per video. This is also something I kind of like feedback on. Like, I enjoy making the videos, and to some extent I just make them when I want to, but I'm very interested to know whether you think that it's better for me to take more time for each video and have them try to be longer and more meaningful, or whether you'd rather hear from me more often with shorter kind of, off-the-cuff videos about certain topics. I'm sure I'll still spend time making larger, more research videos occasionally, but if you want to see more incidental gameplay or even more interviews or whatever, let me know. Those ones are quite easy to put together relative to the long researched ones. So over the last year, I've been asked a bunch of questions, either in YouTube comments, and I try to read all the YouTube comments if I can, or via email. And I've been accumulating these questions and putting them together so that one day I could potentially do some kind of Q&A thing. And I think that this milestone here of hitting 100k subs and having the channel up for a year is as good a time as any to answer some of the questions that have accumulated. Now, of course, if you have more questions that I'm not, answering here, please send them in. I can't promise I'll answer everything. For these questions that I'm including today, I've rewritten them mostly to keep them short and to the point, and sometimes combining multiple questions into one. So you can see this kind of like generic categories of questions I've been asked, as opposed to specific quotes from specific emails. All right, so let's get into it. The first question is, how does phishing work in Path of Exile? Now, this is something that I am asked, I'm not going to say literally on a daily basis, but it feels like that. There's an awful lot of emails. It's by far the most common thing that people write in with. And the tricky thing here is, like, while I was at GGG, I was super secretive about how phishing works, right? You know, I didn't want to spoil any of the stuff that people have yet to work out. Now that I've left GGG, I also can't talk about it, right? Those are their secrets. This is secret phishing knowledge that does not belong to me anymore. It's been passed on to the team working on these games, and so it's up to them whether they want to share it. I really appreciate the passion of the Path of Exile phishing community who write in with questions, but they need to focus those questions at active GGG developers, because I honestly just don't have the authority to spoil that information at the moment. So the next question is, what have you been playing recently? Well, I'll divide this into several categories. On my phone, I've been playing Ridiculous Fishing EX, which is a re-release on Apple Arcade of the 2013 Ridiculous Fishing game. It's worth checking out if you happen to have an Apple Arcade subscription. I have feelings about subscription game services now after having to sign up to play this one game, so that was an interesting experience, but I feel I got my money's worth. I'll just probably cancel once I finish playing this game. So on my Steam Deck, I've been playing Dome Keeper and Halls of Torment, which are both good Steam Deck games where you can kind of relax on the couch and play them. Dome Keeper is what's the best way to describe it? A lot of people say tower defense, but it really isn't a tower defense game. It's kind of like got a roguelike style progression system where you get incremental upgrades between games that you play. It has a town cycle. You go mining and then bring resources back to upgrade your dome and defend it against monsters. I've been enjoying it a lot, and I actually strongly recommend that game. Halls of Torment is a Vampire Survivors-like game, which is, you know, pretty spammy in places, but that's what the genre is like. It has really cool old-school Diablo 1 and 2 style graphics that I've been enjoying, and yeah, I recommend that as well. I've played a bunch of other Vampire Survivors-like games, you know, Death Must Die and that kind of stuff, and I think that I've settled on Halls of Torment as the one that I'm sinking the most time into. On computer, I've been playing Project Diablo 2. You saw my video recently where I started out my assassin, and the assassin is still alive. She's level 72 as a hardcore assassin in Hell, and I plan to do a video, I've indicated like weeks or months from now, with my overall thoughts on the mod. Even though I'm in Hell difficulty at 72, that's nowhere near endgame, so I have obviously more mature thoughts than I did when I was first playing it, but honestly I haven't really scratched the surface of what makes this mod unique yet. So as I keep progressing through, I will continue to make notes, and then I'll do a video later on with my deeper thoughts on this particular mod. So the next question I get a lot is, are your plants real? Now, I never really intended to have kind of a plant wall behind me when making videos. It's just that this is where I sit at my desk, and there are plants behind me, and I didn't want to move them, so it just happens to come along for the ride. And yeah, the plants are real, and I get three types of comments on the plants. The first type of comment is, wow, they're so healthy, what's the secret? The second comment is, Chris, you are underwatering your plants, they are sick. And the third comment is, you are overwatering your plants, they are sick. So we can average this out to the plants being okay. And to be honest, I have a routine where every week during summer and every 2 weeks during winter, I check with a water meter whether the soil is dry. And if it's dry, I put more water in, and that's it. And these are the plants that have survived with that routine. So the more complicated ones that need more care, they died, they're gone. And these ones are the ones that happen to survive if you just water them when they're dry. And that's the secret with the plants. So I appreciate that people like them. Probably won't do a plant care video in the future because that's all there is. I haven't received any new ones recently. It's pretty much just been this selection for a while. So I'm not that much of a plant guy, but it's nice to have, you know, some greenery in the home, produces some oxygen, that kind of stuff. So speaking about the plant wall, many people ask what the chromatic orb-like object on the shelf behind me is. And that is a bismuth crystal, and bismuth is an element quite similar to lead that basically if you happen to cool it in the right way, you know, there's videos about this, then it produces these beautiful naturally colored crystals where you get to see a rainbow pattern. And the reason why people call it a chromatic orb is because it looks a lot like a Path of Exile chromatic orb. And my belief is that the chromatic orb is actually based on bismuth. I believe that I have a pretty strong memory of there being concept art of bismuth lying around in the office at around the time that we designed the currency items, and that is the actual history of that particular currency item. The next question, which appears related to Path of Exile currency items, is what's the Chaos Orb on the shelf behind you? So that Chaos Orb object is not related to Path of Exile currency at all. It's a BAFTA, otherwise known as a British Academy Award, and we were lucky enough to receive it in 2020 in the Evolving Game category. I'll tell you the story of how that happened. So it was early 2020, and we found out that we'd been nominated for a BAFTA. Now, a nomination by itself is a big deal, right? A lot of games list, they're a BAFTA nominee and so on, and that was awesome, right? It was really cool to find out. And we were invited to the black tie red carpet event in London where we get to go and, sit with all the other game developer celebrities and see who wins the award. And of course, there was zero chance we were going to win it. We were up against a lot of other really big, famous games that are much larger than we were in the Evolving Game category. I forget who the lineup was, but it's stuff like Fortnite, right? Really big, popular games. And so this was just on the cusp of the pandemic becoming a big thing. The prospect of traveling to London for this was terrifying for me because, who knows if the borders are going to close and I'd be trapped in England or whatever. And while I am a British citizen, I need to be, in New Zealand making games. And so, I politely declined attending the ceremony and had arranged to send a friend who lives in the UK in my stead on the off chance that we were to win it. He would get to go on stage and then do an award acceptance speech and all that kind of stuff, which I didn't tell him that was going to happen. Like, that would have been a surprise, but, because I really didn't think we actually were going to win it. So, of course, the event was cancelled. They didn't do a BAFTA red carpet in-person event because of the pandemic, and they basically said, look, we're going to do this digitally. What you need to do is to make a digital acceptance video. You're in New Zealand, do something cool, go to the native bush or whatever, put together something, and if you win, we'll play the video. Now, I wasn't expecting us to win, and I was very busy, right? We were just about to, there's the possibility that we were going to go into lockdown and all that kind of stuff. There was a lot on my plate, and to do this video properly means taking several staff members, planning things out, going somewhere, getting microphones and lights and doing it all and having me do the acceptance stuff. And, I was kind of putting this off a bit, getting close to the deadline, and we hadn't organized anything yet. And so then we got plunged into lockdown, and the rules in New Zealand were incredibly strict. There was zero chance I was going to see another person for a while. And so I'm sitting there at home on the first day of lockdown, and I need to make this video. And, again, I'm not thinking we're going to win. There's a 1% chance that this video gets shown anywhere. And so I think to myself, okay, well, the context here is that all the other companies are going to be putting together quite polished acceptance videos. They're not in lockdown yet necessarily. New Zealand was, was quite quick with this. And so I thought to myself, okay, so I need to dress up. So I managed to find a blazer jacket, and I just didn't have any dress pants. So I filmed a video. I had no one to help me. There was no one to hold the camera, and I didn't have all of this recording equipment that I have now. So I hold my phone up, selfie style like that, with my jacket on, and literally no pants, and record a thing saying, hey, thanks so much, it's great to win this. And that's available online. I'm not going to link it, it's somewhere. But yeah, that was how I filmed what's the equivalent of like, an Oscar acceptance video, but British, with no pants on. And so no one knows that story, but that's what happened with that. The next question is a bit more of a serious one. People often ask me why I left grinding gear games, and I've talked about this publicly in my first video on the channel. It's buried like an hour in, but when I was talking with David, I spoke about it alongside a few other topics of what I was up to, and this is at the 1 hour, 9 minute and 40-second mark. And I mean, the short version is I'd been at the company for 17 years. My job had turned into being the CEO of a 200-person company, and I decided to retire. At the end of 2023, I wanted to spend more time with my family, working on my hobbies. And at that stage, I honestly didn't expect to get back into game development again. I think I was just really, burnt out, and I just wanted to retire and fade off into the sunset. And that's essentially what I did. This ties in, of course, to the next question, which is, how is your new game studio going? So after I retired, I got to spend 2024 not doing any work, and I honestly got really bored. I understand I'm in a privileged position being able to attempt to retire in my 40s, but I think that I still have a lot of creativity left in me, and so I forced myself to, focus on my magic cards and seeing friends and traveling and that kind of stuff throughout 2024. But in the back of my head, I was thinking, like, I really want to make something. I really want to get back into making games. Obviously on a much smaller scale, right? I still, I was still a bit burnt out from running such a large company at such a fast pace and everything. There's a lot of responsibilities running Path of Exile, and I have a lot of respect for the team who are doing that at the moment. Jonathan's doing a great job leading them, and it's really taken the mantle of that company over in such a good way. And I didn't want to run anything that large. And so I made a small indie studio last year called Light Pattern. And I haven't really talked about it a lot on this channel. I think I've mentioned the name of it one time. I mean, I've got the t-shirt on, but I have really avoided discussing my work, I guess, on the channel, and we've just talked about other topics. And a lot of this is because of expectations. I mean, what we're making is small. What we're making is not a thing that's huge like Path of Exile. And I worry that because at some stage we're going to announce our game. This is years away, like we're in stealth mode for quite a while, but at some stage we'll announce our game, and I really worry the reaction is going to be, what? All this time and you just made that? Like, people were expecting us to spend $100 million making the next huge online game or whatever, and this isn't what we're making. And we have a tiny team. I mean, we're at like 10 people currently, and I'm really loving it. Like, getting to work with such a small team means you get to work really closely with everyone. You understand everything that's going into the game. It's like the good old days of game development, right? A small indie team. We don't have any deadline pressure. We don't have any external investors or publishers. We're really taking our time getting things right. I'm funding the game entirely myself, so all the people writing and offering money can stop. That's okay. We're good. And we are taking our time. We're not going to have anything to show for a number of years. I don't have anything to say about the game we're working on. I mean, I'm enjoying the process. I think I'm going to like the game. And to me, being the person who's funding this and, so invested in it, that's the important part. And we will at some stage talk about it, but it's going to be substantially closer to completion at that stage. We want the ability to kind of just like cook on what we're working on and not really have to worry too much about keeping up a public image of doing marketing and providing updates and that kind of stuff. We'd much rather just get what we want to make made and then see what you guys think about it. In other news, we recently moved office. I was previously being generously lent some free space by another company, and that was awesome to get to hang around them, but eventually we outgrew that space, and now we have our own small office, and we'll be sharing it with Eric Olofsson's company, Eric's Curiosa, and they're the company who make Sorcery Contested Realm, the card game. I did an interview with Eric a few months ago on the channel. I used to work with him at GGG. He was the art director, and it's kind of fortuitous that many years later we get the ability to share an office space together. And it's going to be really cool seeing how they make sorcery, and he, of course, is going to enjoy watching us do our game, and I'm really looking forward to that. And we have a really cool vibe in the new office. I'll do a video at some stage with a tour of it, but we just have to take down all the personal and private stuff about the game before we do that, of course. The next question is light pattern a reference to the concept of dark patterns? And yes, it is. And if you're not sure what I'm referring to, I did a video about dark patterns and manipulative behavior in games and so on, and this is something I'm referencing by calling the company Light Pattern. The next question is Light Pattern hiring? Now, this depends on when you watch this. It's probably best to go to lightpattern.com and have a look at the jobs. Currently, there are none posted. If you're looking at this in late 2026, then we're all good right now. We don't have any current positions open, but we will in the future list positions. So, refresh the site occasionally. We do encourage you to send in your resume and portfolio if you are interested in a job in the future. If something opens up that's appropriate, we'll get in touch. It is amazing how many applicants we had, considering that I had never mentioned the name of the company anywhere. Like, in order to find it, you had to watch the David Brevik video, get to the 1 hour, 9 minute and 40-second mark where that section starts, take a note of the name of the company, Google for it, go to the website, and then apply for the jobs there. Or, I guess, look at the profile, like the YouTube channel, find the link to my personal site, click through that, find Light Pattern, go from there. It's a very circuitous route, but we still receive many, many, many applications per day as a result of people doing that process. So I understand by saying, hey, if you want a job in the future, send your details in, is going to cause a silly amount of spam. I may not be able to reply. I mean, I will absolutely reply to job applicants, obviously, but I will not necessarily be able to reply to other emails that people send in necessarily. But in terms of job applications, please do, if you're interested in the future, send your stuff in. We aren't hiring at the moment, but you never know. At the point that we do want to hire more positions, it's really nice to have a catalog of people we can browse immediately and make, indications we want to interview them straight away rather than having to list something and wait for people to come in. The next question is the object in the Light Pattern logo a window or a gem? And my answer is yes. So the next question is, why start a YouTube channel after leaving GGG? And I certainly had a lot of videos I wanted to make. There were so many different topics I wanted to talk about, and I liked the idea of getting this stuff out in front of players. And I had a few outs for this, right? Like I occasionally got invited to do a keynote or, the GDC talk and so on. And so I got to make videos occasionally. But I kind of learned from that I enjoyed it and wanted to do more of it. But there just wasn't time. It wouldn't have been a good use of my time to do tons of videos while I was running that company, because it was already a more than full-time thing, and making videos takes a lot of effort and time. The other thing is that it's just not necessarily appropriate, really, for the face of a currently live game to do commentary on potentially other people's action RPGs or whatever, right? It comes across as the company criticizing the other one and so on. Whereas at the moment where, I'm not running a game, I'm just a dude, I can have opinions about stuff, and people will hopefully take that with the good faith that it's intended with, as opposed to it being a commentary of one company attacking another. The other reason is that I knew that my new company was going to be in stealth mode for many years, right? As far as communication with the public goes, I was about to drop off the radar and not talk about what I was working on. And I feel that people who wanted to stay knowing me needed an opportunity to have a way of staying in touch, right? Like I kind of wanted to keep some of the community, and it's something I enjoyed, the community side of running Path of Exile, right? Like having people who cared about my work and wrote nice comments and nasty comments, but were engaged with it was a nice thing. And so I felt that by having a YouTube channel, I got to keep some of that, even if they won't get to see my work for some number of years still. The next question is, how is your Magic the Gathering card collection going? Well, it's going well. I still spend a bunch of time on it. It's slowed down insofar as the fact that I haven't been collecting any cards printed after 2021 for a variety of reasons, and I've been focusing mostly on completing my collection of older stuff, and there's a lot of older stuff to work on. I have my non-basic land collection, which I spoke about in a previous video. That's where my goal was to collect every printing, including foils, non-foils, promos, every single language, for every land card printed up until the end of 2021. And I am almost complete, meaning there's not that many cards that I'm looking for. But a big hole in this was that I really was missing a lot of Portuguese cards. And so I mentioned in a previous video that if anyone was in Brazil and wanted to help out with this, that I would really appreciate the help. And I got 100 emails from people in Brazil who wanted to help out with this. And that was really flattering that 100 people volunteered so much time. And so I had to pick one, and I picked a gentleman who managed to find me the majority of the cards that I was looking for, which means that Portuguese is almost as complete as all of the other languages, and I'm just down to a much smaller list of stuff that I'm looking for. And at some stage I'll update that list, and I'll update the link that was in the previous video so that people could help with that. But it's going really well. I really enjoy collecting non-basic lands for some reason. It's a set of like 33 or so thousand cards where when I find the final ones, they go in the slot where they're missing, and I'll do a video about it at some stage to go into it in more detail. I've also been working on upgrading sets of older stuff. I have avoided talking about this on the channel so far, but I do plan to do a video at some stage. I'm kind of talking about like this kind of stuff here, just older sets of, in this case, is like Arabian Nights stuff and so on. And if you're interested in seeing a video that's much more complete about that old set project, let me know. I'm happy to do that. Another thing I've been working on recently is that Eric from Eric's Curiosa, who work on Sorcery, they released a new set for Sorcery called Gothic that came out recently, and I've been trying to put together a Gothic foil set, which is tricky because there's a lot of foils and they are not as common as in other games, and so it's been quite hard, but I'm working on that. It's my active thing that I'm currently doing in terms of like this month, in terms of tracking cards down. And so that's my current set completion project, and I've kind of switched over to Sorcery being the game that I'm collecting modern, like currently released sets of, as opposed to Magic. I just like the art style more, and the game resonates with me a bit better than modern Magic does. And I also managed to get through the section without referencing Spider-Man or SpongeBob or other recent Magic cards. So I'm very proud of myself there. There was definitely a rant that could have happened. So the next question is, where do I put the secret code that was in your, and then I'm not going to say which video it was in. So as far as I know, only one person solved this puzzle. And the reward was that they got to find out a clue about the genre of game that we're working on. It's not a particularly big clue, it just rules out something which some people had speculated. I'm sure a lot of my viewers weren't even aware that there was a secret code in a video, and this is because it was hiding in plain sight, right? Like, it certainly wasn't trying to hide its identity, it's just that people didn't notice it because they're so used to overlooking that. And if you do find the secret code and you want to work out what to do with it, I feel it's pretty obvious what to do with it, but the clue is that it involves the process of concatenation. Okay, so the next question is, can I donate to your Kia Coding charity? Okay, so I mentioned recently in my video about how I learned to code and so on that the quick summary is, when I was a kid, my parents really, at like age 7 or so, my parents really took me learning to code as a serious thing, and they put resources into this. You know, they got me a computer back in the 80s, all the programming books I needed, help from other people, and made sure that I had the resources I needed to learn to code. And I was really privileged that I was in a position where that was possible, right? Like a lot of people aren't. And so when I grew up and I could afford to, put a little bit of money into helping people, I started a charity which gets programming lessons into primary schools in New Zealand. So basically it identifies disadvantaged groups of students and so on who would otherwise not have access to private programming lessons, and gets tutors into those schools so that they can learn to program at the age of 7, 8, 9, kind of formative age where they can develop it as a useful skill alongside the other skills they're developing. And this means that in high school, when a programming course is offered to them, they'll know what it means. They'll have a head start against other kids. And so I'm running this as a charity, and it's going well, and we have like 130 kids enrolled at the moment and getting these lessons across a number of schools in New Zealand, and that's going well. And so after I mentioned this in my video, or some people found its website, they've been writing and saying, can they donate to it? The short answer is yes, but the long answer is it's a bit tricky. The first problem is that we don't have any credit card processing facilities and don't have a particular interest in setting them up at this stage, and so donations would need to be made via bank transfer, which is harder. And the other issue is that only Kiwis get a tax credit. So if a New Zealander were to donate money, they get a receipt from the charity that enables them to get a third of the money back as tax credit from the government because they made a charitable donation. And if an overseas person, like an American or European, did this, they would not get that kind of credit. Their government would not acknowledge it. And so when people have written in asking if they can donate, I'm honest that yes, it is possible, but honestly, the charity is pretty well funded at the moment. I've been putting a bunch of money in, as have some other local people, and it's all good. We're happy with its progress. We'll gradually expand it over time, but there's no particular need for people to hurry to donate to this charity. We haven't been pushing for that. So the next question is, do you play Path of Exile or Path of Exile 2? And I'll answer these two separately. For Path of Exile 1, I haven't played it for a while. I was very close to the game for 17 years. I played it every single day at work, and I'm intentionally taking a break so that I can enjoy it as a player rather than a developer. As a developer of Path of Exile, I was so used to playing it with a notepad open so I can take note of every single thing that I want to get changed, and had a really critical eye of examining every part of the game. Whereas as a player, I just want to chill out and enjoy it. And so by taking a break, I'm expecting that when I return to the game, I can just have a bunch of fun and enjoy the game as it's meant to be enjoyed. And so I expect that at some stage, I'll do a video of me playing Path of Exile. And whatever commentary comes to mind as I'm doing so. Probably Hardcore Solar Self-Found Ruthless. If you're interested in this, leave a comment about it, and I'll see if I can get it on the schedule. As for Path of Exile 2, I'm in an interesting situation here, because while I worked on the game for 5 or 7 years, most of the time there, it wasn't in a balanced state where you can actually play it for fun. It was just a pile of pieces we were assembling and getting right and, getting everything in order so it later can be balanced closer to its early access release. And so I've actually barely played the game as a game. The last time I played it was during the Friends and Family Alpha in the month leading up to early access. That's when things were balanced incredibly hard, and a bunch of streamers had comments on it at the time before more balanced progress was done. And so I've only played up to mid-Act 2, and obviously as releases have happened during early access, I've had a strong temptation to play it because I'm very excited about the game, and I've held off. And the reason why is because this is a unique opportunity where I know that I'm going to like it because it's a game that I have seen so much of the design of. But by waiting for it to be finished before I jump in, I get the experience of actually, it's almost like they've made the game for me, if you know what I mean. Like I was there when we set it going, and then it gets finished, and I get the ability to come and play it as a complete thing without having seen all the in-between versions. It's an experience I'm really looking forward to. So my plan basically is to play Path of Exile 2 at 1.0, have a great time, see what it's like, and I'm holding off until then. The next question is, what's a belief you held strongly 10 years ago that you've since changed your mind about? So I had to think about this one, and I honestly think that it's my feelings about live service games. And so 10 years ago, I felt that live service was entirely upside in all cases, right? It often meant that a game could be free. It meant that a game had variable monetization, so people who didn't want to spend money didn't need to spend very much money. It kind of, scaled to the amount that someone was willing to spend. It meant that because a game was getting constant updates, there was always more to the game. It was kind of a relationship that a player could have with the game that would span potentially a lifetime as the game gets updated over and over. And these all seemed like incredibly good things. And I have to be careful here because I don't want to criticize like Path of Exile or other live service games that are popular. But I've come to realize that alongside these good things, there are also some drawbacks related to a game constantly needing to change to keep up with stuff, and the relationship that community feedback has on the way that a game changes. You get situations where you have to make certain changes, even if you do not believe that it is the right thing for the game, because otherwise your release will get boycotted or you'll get review bombed and so on. And games that do not have any changes because they're just finished and complete often don't have these pressures because the players aren't going to be getting any patches, for example. And so there are two extremes on this spectrum here, and I'm not arguing that one is necessarily better than the other, or that there's any problem with live service games necessarily, but I've come to realize this is a far more nuanced field than I thought it was 10 years ago, where I just basically thought that live service games were the future, and I would have scoffed at something like Baldur's Gate 3, which isn't getting a sequence of updates. But as we know, people loved that game, and there are reasons why that model works well for certain types of games. This is something I plan to do a full video about at some stage. I'm just a bit wary about topics like this because I don't want headlines of like Path of Exile creator criticizes Path of Exile when I'm not trying to criticize the game. I love the game and think that it's got a lot of good stuff going for it in these aspects, and so much is done to minimize any drawbacks that they have. But yet, I do have opinions about the legitimate pros and cons that some of these approaches do have. It's like game monetization, for example. There are so many different ways to monetize a game. Every one of them has drawbacks, and a fair analysis of it involves going through all the different ways and looking at the drawbacks of those different techniques and acknowledging those, and then picking something that's the best thing for the game. And so I have apprehension for a few videos I want to make because I don't want people to take the wrong takeaway from it, but I do actually want to post honest analysis of some of these topics that are used in games and talk about the pros and cons. So the next question is, have you ever abandoned a video that you've completed? And there was one. So I made a YouTube short about paid character classes. Like, it was a 90-second video about some of the drawbacks with games releasing character classes by themselves for money, and to do with how players compare that new character class, which they haven't solved yet, against their existing ones, which they have solved, and the new character class has to compare favorably, which means it needs to probably be more powerful than the existing ones, and all of the problems that occur from that. And I completed this video, had it ready to post, and I ran it by some friends. And I received two pieces of feedback. The first one was people were really unhappy at the idea of me doing unique YouTube shorts, as in YouTube shorts that have unique content that isn't in a long-form video, because a lot of people have blocked shorts, and they feel that if I started posting shorts that weren't just a snippet of an existing video, for going viral purposes, that it would mean that they're missing out on content because they don't want to see shorts. And I kind of agreed. I kind of think that short form content is, the bane of society and all that, TikTokization stuff. So that was one reason to abandon this video. The second one is that being a short, it meant that I didn't have very much space in there for context. And some of the nuance of the argument I was making about paid character classes was lost. To be honest, it looked like it was just attacking D2R, right? Or attacking Last Epoch, or games that have paid character classes. And I didn't want to attack these games. And so my thoughts on this were that at some stage I'll cover the topic, but probably in the context of a longer video about, different monetization options. And then I can have a more fair view of the good and the bad of each of these options without it just coming across like I'm targeting one specific game. So the next question is, how long does it take for you to make a video? And honestly, it's way longer than people realize. Like, I get that it's theoretically possible that I could sit down in front of my camera and I could hit record and talk for 10 minutes about a topic and then hit stop and then drag the file onto YouTube, and in 10 minutes I've made a 10-minute video. But the reality is I spend a lot longer. So for a start, I want to research a topic, right? I want to find out what other people think about it. I want to do my diligence, make sure I've got a lot of notes. I want to make sure that the opinion that I'm putting forward is one I can actually stand behind, that represents my full view of the subject and hasn't really missed anything. I then take these notes and I check them with other people. And other people always have stuff to say, right? Like, I get a lot of feedback and I have to go and adjust stuff and I have to make it clearer. And sometimes they're like, dude, you said a lot of words, but you didn't make any important points. And then I have to make my point more clearly. And this involves rewrites and so on. And once I have a script that I'm happy with, I then have to prepare an area with lights. Like, I don't keep my studio lights up and things tidy and so on around here necessarily. I then have to record the video, which takes a frustratingly large number of takes. Like this video here, which I'm recording, I I've been recording for an hour now, and I don't have a script. I'm not reading something. I'm just going, oh, that was a terrible answer, and then re-answering until I get it, to sound a bit better. And so it takes a lot of takes to get things right. And then when I finish that, I've then got to edit the video, and I do the editing myself. And this is partly because I take pride in, I'm doing a bad job with editing, to be clear, but I take pride in doing it myself so I can learn the process and have full control here. I have to fix audio sync issues, like due to my bad setup. I'll have a thing where like my lip to mouth, my lip to sound sync will drift over the course of the video. And when I edit this kind of stuff out, I'm using command line FFmpeg in Linux to process the file to fix drift and so on. I'm not using some fancy Adobe Premiere and so on. I have to get rid of mouth sounds, right? Like all kind of like lip smacks and that kind of stuff from whatever microphone setup I've got here that I don't want to improve. I have to do all the regular cutting up and so on. I have to add overlays. I have to come up with a description, a thumbnail, a title. I'm not good at the thumbnail game, but it does require a little bit of like, taking the surprised expression looks and that kind of stuff. Working out a title takes a while, right? Like actually finding something that's compelling and, without sounding like clickbait, for example, a lot of the time. Then I have to run the video past test friends. I have to, show people the video and say, like, in all fairness, is this any good? And people will say, yeah, man, it's amazing. And then I have to like try to get like proper opinions out of them. And then in some cases redo the video, right back, re-record it if there are problems with it. Then before it's posted, I have to work on subtitles. So I believe that it's good for videos to have proper subtitles. It both helps, people who are listening without having the sound on, but it also means that the translations in other languages and the automatic dubbing are correct. And that's something that really frustrates me when subtitles are bad. So I make sure to get them right. And for the longer videos, I enlist a friend to help me with it. Thank you very much for doing that stuff, Nathan. It takes many hours to subtitle a 1 hour video, like 4 to 5 hours. And then when the subtitles are done, I have to watch the video with the subtitles and make sure I'm completely happy that it's done correctly and, do a final pass over the video. And then after posting the video, I have to read all the comments, of course, which takes a bunch of time. And so all in all, like it's like 10 to 15 hours of work per video. And sometimes it ends up at like a 12-minute video or something like that. Now, this is worth it, otherwise I wouldn't do it. I have a lot of fun with the process and I take pride in it. But some of my friends naively assume it's a case of turn the camera on, talk for 10 minutes, turn it off, and that's the video. So when I say, hey, I'm spending today making a video, I get some surprised reactions at how does it take a day for you to do a video? A lot of them are faster, right? Gameplay videos, like you just turn it on and play, and that is the case of an hour video takes only a few hours to do, including editing. Interviews, despite being longer, can be faster because they're usually one take. You don't get the ability to redo stuff very easily. My interviews are not particularly heavily edited. And, you do a bit of prep for interviews, of course, making sure you've got good questions and, canvassing the questions around and so on. But that's much faster than actually coming up with a fully structured, long monologue about something. So the next question is, can I edit your videos for you? You've just heard me rant about how long it takes and how annoying it is. So I get a lot of mails asking if people can edit my videos, make me thumbnails, put me on YouTube ad networks, sponsorship stuff. I decline all of this. I'll let you guys know once I need a video editor. I'll let you guys know when I need help with thumbnails, and I'll let you guys know if I need an ad. I don't need an ad network, and I don't need sponsors, and I appreciate the positivity of people writing in about sponsorships and stuff, but I will ignore any commercial mails related to the channel. I'm sorry, I just don't have time to answer all of those. And on that topic, the next question is, how much email do you get? And it's a lot. Sometimes on a busy day, like after posting a video, it takes me hours, 3-4 hours to get through all of the email. And I really like reading fan mail. I'm not trying to complain about it. That's why my email address is public and findable. I mean, I'm not going to say what it is here, but you can find it easily. And I like it when people write in with thoughts. And if they want to reply, I can give a short reply, like a sentence about it, for example, is easy. But sometimes the emails are structured in a way where they kind of expect an essay back. And if I'm putting the effort into kind of answering someone in that much detail, which I do a few a day, if someone needs an essay, I'll occasionally write one. But I'd like to put that effort towards making a video I can share with more people, right? Like helping one person with their problem is cool, but being able to make a video about that thing and help hundreds of thousands of people potentially is even more cool. And so I recommend, feel free to send me fan mail. If you're wanting to mail me and want a reply, please structure it so it's okay if the reply is short, right? Like if I can read the thing and then it's clear what you want to know and I can reply with a sentence or two, that's no problem at all. It's just that if you need like a very nuanced view on something, I'd recommend suggesting it as a video idea because then that's something I can actually help more people with. And I don't mind helping individual people. It's just that at the end of the day, I do have other obligations and I do want to spend time on exercise and my work and that kind of stuff. And if it's all on email, then that's going to cut into how soon you see my next game. The next question is, which video did you think would perform better than it did? Okay, so this one was a YouTube short that I made, and it got far lower views than anything else on my channel. So I was in the supermarket, and it was around Easter time, and they had these display boxes of Cadbury cream eggs that they were selling. And there were some sealed ones there that hadn't been opened. Like, the idea is the shop clerks would, when they run out of ones in the open box, they'd open a new box and people would buy them from there. And those sealed boxes had the type of shrink wrap on them that looked like old school Magic the Gathering booster boxes. And I thought, oh, cool, it's a booster box of cream eggs. And I went home and mentioned this to a couple of people. And they're like, oh, that'd be hilarious to do an unboxing of cream eggs. And I thought to myself, there's a video there. So I went back to the supermarket, and I bought 2 booster boxes of Cadbury cream eggs, which isn't cheap. It was like 100 eggs. They're $1 each, And so I bought these, and it was one of the most humiliating experiences of my life, having to go up to the counter to buy these 2 boxes, because you can't just scan the box. You have to scan the egg and then type in the quantity, and that requires like a supervisor, and then there's always people saying, why are you buying these? Can we open them? And I had to be like, no, I need them sealed. So I get my 2 boxes home, and the reason I bought 2 was because I wanted to open one in the video as an unboxing thing and have another one as a spare, because I have to do this in one take, and I was physically destroying the product by opening it up. And then the plan was to open the box, pretend it was a Magic the Gathering booster box. And the joke is that Magic cards are getting weird these days, and so having the Magic cards be cream eggs was the joke. You kind of unwrap it and comment on its condition and stuff. And, there were some gimmicks in there, like trying to jam it in a sleeve and this kind of stuff. And I managed to film the video in one take, which had the problem of leaving me with a completely unopened box of cream eggs to get rid of. People at work appreciated them. So I did the video, and I liked it. I watched it and thought, Chris, this is the best work you've done. This is so good. And I linked it to my friends, and it was A+ all around. People loved it. And I posted it on the channel, and no one cared. It got a couple of comments, far lower views, and I'm not trying to complain. It was just a failed attempt at some virality. I really enjoyed making it, and I'm not a comedic person, and I don't want to make joke videos like that, but I posted on April Fool's Day too, as well, I should note, and I had a lot of fun, and it makes me wish I was more creative so I could do stuff like that more often. Like, I'm jealous of other YouTubers who manage to come up with cool ideas like that every day, and so this is my failed foray into comedic videos. I'm not asking for sympathy on that one. I obviously missed the mark somewhere, but it was a lot of fun to put together, and if you can find it's just on the shorts part of the channel if you want to see it. I enjoyed it though. So the final question is, why not monetize the channel? And I mean, the answer is really simple, right? I don't want my viewers to be seeing ads. There's some baseline number of ads that YouTube puts in there to keep the platform going, but turning additional ones on by adding monetization is not really worth it, right? Sure, I'd make it $100 per video or something like that, but I'd rather pay that money in order to not have you guys see ads that get in the way of viewing the content. My goal here isn't to, juice viewer numbers in order to get revenue. My goal here is to make good content and hopefully grow my subscriber base over time by providing you guys with stuff that you want to see and that you enjoy. So that's all the questions that I've pulled out for this Q&A. If you've got any more that you'd like me to answer, just send them in, leave a comment or send me an email with a question. And next time I do a Q&A video, which I can't promise is going to be soon, I'll put them together and get you some answers. Thank you very much for being such a great community. I'll see you next time.